All right, boys and girls, we're on to chapter 6 in Shooting the Moon, where we left off last. They were kind of just going back in time, doing a little bit of a flashback as to her brother TJ's decision to enlist in the army as a medic. So now we're on to chapter 6. I only had one friend who had a brother in Vietnam. So when I'd finished developing and printing TJ's film, which took me 2 days in the darkroom, Sergeant Bird walking me through the process step by step. I took the photographs to Cindy Lorenzo's house. Even though I knew there was only a slight chance she'd appreciate them, Cindy was not actually my first choice for an audience. But since my two best friends, Liz and Pam, had moved away, and my next best friend, Jennifer, was spending the summer with her grandmother, I didn't have much of a pool to pick from. There were good things and bad things about being friends with Cindy Lorenzo. The worst thing was that she was an 11-year-old girl whose brain was still on the first grade level. She could read and dress herself and ride her fancy bicycle in wobbly circles around her front yard, but she couldn't think straight at all. It was like her emotions got in the way of her thoughts. She was nervous and excitable and shaky about around the edges. She hit and bit. The good things about being friends with Cindy Lorenzo include the fact that I could tell her my secrets, and she never blabbed a word of what I said. I could brag on myself, and she wouldn't raise her eyebrows every few seconds the way regular people would to keep me from getting too puffed up with my own greatness. Some days Cindy acted like she thought I was some sort of hero, and that's a feeling that's hard to resist, no matter who's having it about you. I'm not a ballerina, but I could be one if I wanted to, Cindy informed me the minute I walked into Lorenzo's front hallway. Joey said I couldn't even be a ballerina, so I kicked him. Joey was one of Cindy's invisible friends. Most little kids had invisible friends who were nice and friendly, but with Cindy's crowd, it was hit or miss. She complained all the time about her invisible friend, Suzanne, who was a pincher. I just stuck my tongue out at her. That's what I did, she'd say, to let me know that Suzanne's pinching had not gone unavenged. Bless your heart, Jamie. You don't have a bit of tan this summer. You need to get yourself over to the swimming pool, Mrs. Lorenzo swooped into the room in a cloud of rosy perfume. It's hard to make your eyes go from Mrs. Lorenzo to Cindy and back again and convince yourself they were related. Cindy was tall for her age, and she walked hunched over like an old lady, and her skin was splotchy and drab. Mrs. Lorenzo, on the other hand, fluttered and flittered, hithered and yawned, high color on her cheeks, her hair piled on top of her head in one dramatic style or another. She and my mother were best friends, which is why Cindy and I got thrown together so much. That and the fact that the Lorenzos lived across the street from us, and I could babysit Cindy when her parents wanted to go out for dinner. Let's go talk to Brutus, Cindy said, tagging on my hand. He says he misses you, even if he likes it better over here with me. I followed her upstairs to her room, looking as I always did at the family pictures that lined the wall above the railing. There were Cindy's brothers, both grown, the older one, Nathan, even married with a baby. You could see that they were Mrs. Lorenzo's children, no questions asked, with their handsome faces and pretty brown eyes. The picture that fascinated me the most was the one at the very top of the stairs. The family pictures the Lorenzos had taken the year before, when both sons came over to visit at the same time, right before Mark, who was 23, left for Vietnam. It was a who in this picture doesn't belong picture, with the answer being Cindy. The other four Lorenzos were looking the photographer straight in the eye, their white teeth gleaming, dark hair shining, everything pressed and straight and starched. Colonel Lorenzo and Mark, both in uniform. Cindy sat slouched next to her mother, her nervous eyes wandering away from the camera, her shoulders slumped in their little old lady slouch. It was like someone had snuck her into the picture as a joke, and the other Lorenzos were ignoring her the best they could. Brutus says he came from Africa, but he never told you that because you don't like Africa, Cindy said, leading me into a room. I like Africa, I protested before I could remember not to get caught up in conversation with Cindy like she was just another one of my friends. Within seconds, I'd be arguing on her level, saying hurtful things just to feel superior. Brutus says you don't. Cindy reached over and pinched. So don't lie. Sorry, I rubbed the red welt on my arm. I won't anymore. Cindy sat primly on her neatly made bed. The pink Chanel spread pulled tight and reached across a pile of stuffed animals towards a raggedy, stretched out boxer dog with fluff coming out of his left eye socket where the eye used to be. This was my beloved Brutus, given to me by TJ on my 3rd birthday, according to my mother. He'd struggled hard over whether or not to give me Brutus or keep him for himself, but in the end, brotherly love had won out. He named Brutus before he gave him to me, saying that if he ever got a dog, if he ever got a dog, if our mom suddenly stopped being allergic to them, that's what he planned on calling it. You know, you have to give Brutus back to me one day, I told Cindy the way I did every time I came over. I only loaned him to you. It's not for keeps. Cindy hugged Brutus tight to her chest. Brutus likes it here better. I told you he told me that. He told me that he hates you and wishes you would die. Oh my goodness. It's a mean teddy bear, don't you think? You wouldn't think that same crazy thing Cindy Lorenzo said to you, something made up in her halfway working mind, could hurt your feelings, but Cindy's words could pinch as hard as her fingers. I knew I should just ignore her, and sometimes I could, but right now I wanted to pinch Cindy right back. Hey, Cindy, do you want to go to the playground and see who's there? We could swing on the swings. Cindy went pale, the brown blotches on her skin standing out worse than ever. No, 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 she said, the last no scaling into a wail. No! No, I will not. No, no, no. She curled up into a ball on her bed, still clutching Brutus. I felt a tiny pang of regret. But more than that, I felt I'd gotten Cindy back and she deserved it. It's not the nicest part of myself that felt that way. Sometimes I thought it was too bad that I'd figured out Cindy couldn't stand being around a lot of people at once. A nicer person than me would have used this information against Cindy. Would never have used this information against Cindy. I tried not to do it too much, but every once in a while, I just couldn't help myself. Okay, I said after a minute. Sat down next to her on the bed. That's not what I came over to ask you anyway. I wanted to show you the pictures TJ sent me from Vietnam. Well, he didn't send me the pictures, actually. He sent me the film I developed by myself. TJ's a meanie, Cindy shrieked. I hate him. Cindy was in love with my brother. Her love had shown itself in a parade of little kid insults and pinches and kicks. It was like watching the Three Stooges, the kind of funny that makes you laugh and wince at the same time. I developed this film myself, I repeated, wanting Cindy to be impressed, even though I knew she wouldn't be. She'd probably never given one thought in her life to how pictures got from the camera to a piece of paper. Still, I liked saying it. Sergeant Byrd taught me how to print pictures this afternoon. He said I'm a natural from start to finish. Learning to develop the film had been easier than I thought it would be. Sergeant Byrd talked me through the whole process, making me do everything myself, saying that the only way I'd learned it. When I finally pulled out the long strip of negatives from the processing tank, I felt like some kind of genius. I hung the negatives to dry, trying not to peek at what they might reveal. To print a negative, you have to load it into an enlarger, which is the machine that shines light through the negative and exposes the image on a piece of light-sensitive paper. When you're ready to do that, you turn off the room's overhead light and turn on the safe light. Open up the enlarger lens and then the enlarger light on, which projects the image onto the paper. From there, it's a lot of adjusting until you have the image just the way you want it. Turn off the enlarger, put in a sheet of photographic paper, turn on the enlarger for 6 seconds, then it's time to slip the paper into the developer for a minute or so, and then into the stop bath for 10 seconds, and then you put it into the fix. Finally, you wash the paper off and hang the picture to dry. Wow, I think the usually digital picture is a little easier than this, right? What do you think, guys? My hands shook trying to load the first negative into the enlarger. I didn't know what to expect. Couldn't quite imagine what picture would emerge, but I knew it would be something amazing. Actually, Sergeant Bird informed me, it's called a hooch, and it's a good picture. Your brother knows what he's doing with the camera. Maybe if he was trying to if what he was trying to do was bore people to death. From a roll of 36 negatives, I counted 11 huts, 9 assorted groupings of GIs, most of them sitting around with their shirts off and drinking beer, 6 pictures of the same dog, a white terrier with a black spot around its left eye, and 8 pictures of bushes and trees. There was even a close-up of a blooming flower. A flower. I shook my head in disgust. Now, sitting on Cindy's bed, I opened the manila envelope I'd put TJ's pictures in once they dried. Here's the picture of some soldiers that are probably friends of TJ's. I think some of them are sort of cute, don't you? I held up the picture for Cindy to see. I was trying to act excited about it, but the fact is the whole roll of film had been a disappointment to me. Huts and tents and soldiers waving beer cans in the general direction of the camera. Nothing worth noting, in my opinion, especially when there was a war being fought in the vicinity. If I was excited about anything, it was that I'd learned to develop and print film. I wanted to show somebody what I had done, even if the end result wasn't really all that fascinating. Come watch me ride my bike, Cindy said, hopping off her bed. Don't you want to see the rest of TJ's photographs? He's in Vietnam, just like your brother Mark. Cindy crossed her arms. I know TJ's in Vietnam. I'm not stupid. I just have a medical condition. It's just we both have brothers in Vietnam, and it's a thing we have in common, I said. Cindy looked at me for several seconds. Then she nodded and sat back down next to me on the bed. I like having things in common. I showed her the rest of the pictures. The last one I pulled out of the envelope was a moonshot. I wanted that one, Cindy told me, tugging the pictures out of my hands. I could put it on my wall, and then I could look at the moon anytime I wanted. Okay, I could go back to the rec center in the morning and print another copy if I felt like it. Are there any others you want? No, just the moon. It was one of TJ's better moons, I thought. It had a band of light around it, and it sat plush in the middle, beaming, a fat full moon on a beautiful night. Now, will you watch me ride my bike? Cindy asked. Sure, I told her, tucking the pictures back into the envelope. Usually, I would have found an excuse to go home, but I was feeling good. I developed and printed a roll of film. And maybe, even better than that, TJ had asked me to do it, which meant he believed I could. I don't know why he believed it, but he did. So now we had something in common, even though we were so far away from each other. Come on, Cindy groused at me from the doorway. Let's get going. I picked up the envelope and followed her out the door. Okay, you don't have to be such a grouch. But I was smiling as I said it. I guess I was in a generous mood. All right, that's chapter 6. That's an interesting character. That's Cindy. All right, till next time, have a great day.